12 years. What a wonderful story. You have to remember that the last story in this one all happens in a very short amount of time. Jesus is on the Jewish side of the lake teaching the people. The sun sets in front of him, behind the hills in front of him. That night he leaves, goes to the Gentile side of the lake during the night, and a storm hits. He heals the man with a legion of demons, and he's asked to leave so that actually the next morning he's heading back to the Jewish side. So imagine that you're a part of the crowd on the Jewish side, and it comes evening time. It's time to go home. Jesus stops, gets in the boat, and you go home. The next morning, news comes that those boats are coming back again. So you go back to the shore. That's why there was a crowd that was waiting there, because not much time had gone by. And yet, in that space of time, you have these 4 power over stories. As they go across the lake, you have the power over nature. As they land to the other side, the power over demons. Then they come back to the Jewish side, and in this story here, you have the power over disease. And finally, with the raising of Jairus' daughter, you have the power over death. Well, the ruler of the synagogue. This was a position that the people voted on, and yet they had to vote on someone who was approved by the Sanhedrin, either before the vote or shortly afterwards. This person had a certain amount of authority. First of all, he was in charge of the synagogue, the actual buildings. It was his job to make sure that they stayed in good order. He was also in charge of the worship time, making sure everything was in place and everything was right. Also, there was a school that went on in the synagogue. Young boys at a certain age came, and the rabbi taught them to read, and to read the law of Moses, and to interpret it for themselves. And as also the ruler of the synagogue was someone who had to make sure there was a rabbi for the Sabbath teaching. That's why whenever Jesus was asked to teach in a synagogue, it was a ruler of the synagogue that had asked him. Also, when the Apostle Paul, as he was going around his missionary journeys, he was often asked to speak in a synagogue. Well, that was the ruler of the synagogue that asked him to do that. Now, when you get to the woman who had the issue of blood for 12 years. It said that she wanted to touch the hem of his garment, to touch the tassel. A Jewish man had to wear 4 hems or four tassels on the 4 corners of his cloak. This was to represent the law of Moses, that he recognized the law of Moses, and he knew his responsibilities in keeping that. Jesus would have worn these 4 tassels, these 4 hems, because he was a Jewish man, but also he was a rabbi. He had to acknowledge the law of Moses. This was the same hem, the same tassels that the Pharisees made their tassels very large. Their hems were very, very large to show everyone they acknowledged the law of Moses in a big way and their responsibilities to it. Now, after the woman touched the hem of the garment, but by the way, that's what she wanted. She was acknowledging God in this. She was acknowledging the law of Moses by reaching out, not just the hem, just the edge of his clothes. No. She was reaching for that hem, that tassel, that special thing that represented God's law. And when she did that and she was healed, she didn't want anyone to know about this. She was doing this where that nobody would know, that she could get healed without anyone. So when it was found out, she became afraid. So much that she was trembling. Why? Well, she was unclean. Now, all women, when they have their monthly cycle, became unclean for a certain period of time because of the blood that was involved. Well, this woman had a blood issue for 12 years, which means that for 12 years, she could not go to the synagogue. And if she touched a rabbi, just touched him, even the edge of his garment, that rabbi would be unclean for a certain period of time. She was avoided. People did not want to touch her or have them touch them because they would be unclean. She had gone through a lot of rejection. Her friends were gone. She had spent all of her money on doctors, and all she got out of it was just more rejection. On top of that, she had stolen a healing. She did not have permission to do that. So when she came to Jesus, she was carrying a large bundle of guilt. And Jesus reassured her that it was all right, that all that now was past. Well, when Jairus got to his home, they found that the mourners had already arrived. These were professional mourners. You see, in that day and age, it was a disgrace that if someone died, it was a disgrace not to have loud crying. So they would literally hire professionals that would do this. This was usually women that would come who were very gifted at crying and yelling and shrieking and showing pain. It was their job to not only cry, but also, if extra was paid, that they had certain music that they could play. Literally, they could even have a certain dance that they would dance, especially if it went on for a long period of time. This was where 4 women would get up and they would each have a sword in their hand and they would dance around with this sword. This could go on for days. So consequently, there were substitutes. When one of the mourners became tired, they simply stepped back in a certain way and another mourner would step up and take their place. Because this could go on for literally 7 days. Now, Jesus did not disapprove of this. This was a legitimate profession that women could be a part of. It helped those who were mourning. It helped the non-professional mourners to get involved, to join in, to express their grief and to get it all out. They had a job to do. No, Jesus was not disapproving of this. He was only saying, there's no need right now. The girl's not dead. Well, insights on this wonderful story. I trust you enjoy this. And if you do, come back next week when we continue on with more insights on the story of the week. We'll see you next week.